Hello and welcome back to my channel. It's the weekend after Thanksgiving, and for many, that means it's time for Christmas to officially start. For college football fans, however, it's rivalry weekend, where some of the most heated rivalry games are played. There's no game more nationally known than the University of Michigan versus Ohio State University. Now, I'm not really a fan of either one of these teams, but I'm all for the Big Ten. It seems as though these two colleges, and by extension these two states, have a deep animosity toward one another. When did this start? How did it happen? Well, I have a theory, and it actually goes back to the 1830s when Michigan was trying to become a state, and the city of Toledo seemed to hold the key to economic greatness. The month of December marks the anniversary of the Frostbitten Convention, which gave Ohio the disputed Toledo Strip and Michigan the Upper Peninsula and statehood. Let's learn more about it. The issue began in 1805 when Congress created the Michigan Territory. The southern boundary line of the new territory was different from what Ohio had drawn up in their state constitution back in 1802. The difference went unnoticed at the time, but it would later spark political controversy that would be felt nationwide. In 1812, Congress decided to officially survey the line, but it was delayed due to the war with Great Britain. Finally, in 1816, Surveyor General Edward Tiffin, a former Ohio governor, commenced the survey. Upon being hired to do the survey, he was told to look at the line that had been described in the Ohio Constitution, not the line set forth by Congress in 1805. This placed the mouth of the Maumee River, an important port, completely in Ohio, and this understandably upset the people of Michigan, most specifically Territorial Governor Lewis Cass. In response to this decision, Michigan commissioned a survey of their own and based it on the original congressional line. The area in between these two lines, this disputed territory, became known as the Toledo Strip. Ohio refused to give up the land, but Michigan settlers quietly occupied it for several years, setting up local governments, collecting taxes, and making improvements to the land. Some of these improvements include building roads, which I really wish we would work on our Michigan roads now a little bit more. It wasn't just pride that caused Michigan and Ohio to hold on to the land. There was a great economic benefit to controlling that region. This was a time period before railroads were available to transport materials, so rivers and canals were the major highways for goods to go from place to place. This was especially true in the growing Midwest. A series of canals were being planned to connect the Great Lakes and the Mississippi River. Also during the dispute, the Erie Canal was built. This canal linked New York City to the Great Lakes, making the Toledo area a major hub for corn and other Midwest products being shipped to eastern markets, which in turn made the Toledo Strip even more valuable. The land continued to be under dispute into the 1830s when the Michigan Territory had a large enough population to apply for statehood. Michigan had tried to become a state and join the Union multiple times before, but was being blocked by the congressman from Ohio. The Ohio politicians used their political power to persuade the rest of Congress to block Michigan from becoming a state until the issue of the Toledo Strip was resolved. Then the Toledo War began. On March 31st, 1835, Ohio Governor Robert Lucas and 600 fully armed militiamen moved to Perrysburg, Ohio, just 10 miles southwest of Toledo. This caused Michigan Governor Stevens T. Mason to occupy Toledo with 1,000 armed men. Michigan's goal was to prevent Ohio settlers from moving into the Toledo area. This is when President Jackson intervened. Jackson wanted to prevent an armed conflict and a political crisis, so he consulted Attorney General Benjamin Butler to make a ruling on the border dispute. Ohio was becoming a political powerhouse in the Union, and Michigan was still only a territory, so it had no votes in Congress. So to politicians, Ohio was the more valuable area. Jackson's Democratic Party needed Ohio's favor and votes for the looming 1836 presidential election. Unfortunately for Jackson, Butler's response would not guarantee the support from Ohio. Butler said that until Congress dictated otherwise, the land rightfully belonged to Michigan. Problem solved, right? Nope. As with many things in politics, it was not quite that simple. Some things have never changed. On April 3, 1865, Jackson sent representatives to Toledo in an attempt to try and resolve the conflict. The offer was that the residents of the Toledo Strip would be allowed to choose their own state or territorial government until Congress could settle the matter. Ohio Governor Robert Lucas reluctantly agreed and began to send his militia home, but Michigan Governor Stephen T. Mason refused the deal and prepared for the possibility of armed conflict. 3 days later, elections were held, but not before Ohio officials were harassed by pro-Michigan authorities and residents were threatened with arrest if they submitted to Ohio rule. After the election, Lucas believed the situation was resolved in Ohio's favor and sent out surveyors to officially mark the line. On April 26, the surveying group was attacked by 50 to 60 Michigan militiamen. This is now known as the Battle of Phillips Corners and was the only real battle of this war. The Michigan militia advised the surveyors to retreat and fired shots in the air to chase the Ohioans from what they perceived to be Michigan land. The surveyors who did not run were taken prisoner. In early summer of 1835, Governor Lucas and the Ohio legislature set up a special court to oversee the illegal abduction and unlawful imprisonment cases against the Michigan militia. Ohio also passed several controversial acts that only fueled the people of Michigan's anger. In addition to appropriating $315,000 that it didn't really have to fund their militia, Michigan also drafted a state constitution. Congress and President Jackson were still not willing to allow Michigan into the Union and vowed to reject statehood until the Toledo issue was resolved. The governments of both Michigan and Ohio tried to get the best of each other, and many skirmishes and arrests occurred. Lawsuits were rampant, and spying parties were organized to keep track of those who were entrusted with securing the border. After months of unrest, on July 15, 1835, blood was actually spilled. Michigan's Monroe County Deputy Sheriff Joseph Wood went into Toledo to arrest Major Benjamin Stickney. Stickney and his sons, 1 and 2, yes, he named his sons 1 and 2, resisted, and the whole family was taken into custody. During the struggle, Stickney stabbed Deputy Wood with a penknife, then fled south into Ohio. The deputy's wounds were not life-threatening, but Michigan Governor Mason demanded that Ohio Governor Lucas extradite Stickney for a trial. Lucas refused, so Mason appealed to President Jackson, who declined to intervene. Finally, in August, Jackson caved into Ohio and removed Mason as the territorial governor of Michigan. He appointed John S. Horner to take his place. Horner was very unpopular, and he did not last long. Michigan residents disliked him so much that they actually threw carrots at him when he entered the Capitol. In the October elections, Michigan residents approved the draft of the state constitution, elected Mason as governor once again, and chose their first congressman. However, the United States Congress refused to accept Representative Isaac E. Crary, and the 2 newly elected senators were treated with disrespect because of the dispute. On June 15, 1836, Jackson signed a bill that finally allowed Michigan to become a state if and only if they gave up the Toledo Strip. If they agreed, Michigan would be given a larger area of the Michigan Territory, what we now call the Upper Peninsula. In September, the Michigan legislature that had gathered in Ann Arbor denied the offer because at the time, the Upper Peninsula was considered a worthless, remote wilderness. As the year came to a close, Michigan realized it was nearly bankrupt, partially as a result of the high militia expenses. The U.S. Treasury was about to distribute a $400,000 surplus to the 25 existing states, but not the territories. If Michigan did not become a state, they would miss out on those funds. On December 14, 1836, in Ann Arbor, Governor Mason called a Michigan Territorial Convention. The event was cloaked in controversy. Mason chose delegates who he knew would support statehood, and he was not upset that some of the strongest defenders of Michigan's claim to Toledo boycotted the convention. Some Michiganders called the convention illegal. The delegates passed the legislation anyway. This would formally accept Congress's terms to become a state, and the Toledo War officially ended. Many Michigan residents rejected and ridiculed the resolution, and even Congress questioned the legality of the convention. Because of the chilly reception of the resolution and the notable cold spell at the time in Ann Arbor, this event became known as the Frostbitten Convention. Michigan was finally admitted to the Union as the 26th state on January 26, 1837. The Toledo Strip became a permanent part of Ohio, and the Upper Peninsula remained a part of Michigan. But it's important to note that it wasn't long before the creation of railroads made the Toledo Strip less important than originally believed. While it may seem as though Ohio won the Toledo War, I personally say that Michigan was the real winner because we gained the rich materials and timberland as well as the picturesque scenery that is our Upper Peninsula today. Tequamanon Falls, Sault Ste. Marie, Marquette, Iron Mountain, beautiful land. Differences of opinion about the exact border lasted until 1915 when a final survey was done. This led to one final border adjustment that happened in 1973. So since the Toledo Strip dispute lasted over 200 years, I think it's safe to say that the Ohio-Michigan rivalry will last for decades to come. What about you? What's your favorite current rivalry? Is it a sports rivalry? Is it a rivalry between another state? What is your favorite rivalry? Let me know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. I would love to hear from any of my viewers. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.